Warning! The following video contains spoilers for the game Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, as well as mild mentions for overarching storylines from the original Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy. If you have any intention of experiencing Apollo Justice spoiler-free, I recommend not watching this video. Obligatory disclaimer complete. Let's start the game. One of the hardest parts of making this video was deciding on a title. I originally wanted to follow up on my Themes of Phoenix Wright video by naming this something along the lines of Ace Attorney, an injustice in character development. Now, before you assume I hate this game and smash that dislike button, allow me to make my case and tell you a tale. You see, this isn't so much a review of Apollo Justice as it is a retrospective, or at least a look back on what it means to me. This video is also a follow-up to the last post I made, addressing the themes of the original Ace Attorney trilogy, and just how well those games hit the mark. Going into this, I was ready to break the game down point by point, digressing why I wasn't super fond of it. Admittedly, however, it had been over half a decade since I played the thing. Before I get into my journey of rediscovery, allow me to recall my initial impressions. It's no secret that the original Ace Attorney games mean a lot to me, and had a huge influence on my life. The characters and world inspired me, and I was torn between wanting to be Phoenix Wright and loving him. To liken this to a gut punch would not be inaccurate. I get that Capcom wanted to continue milking the Ace Attorney franchise for all it's worth, but did they have to shoehorn Phoenix into the story like this? Shu Takumi, legendary writer of the original trilogy himself, was opposed to the idea of Phoenix being in the game, but Capcom thought people wouldn't be interested unless it had everyone's favorite comeback king. So maybe initially, I was just a little salty that Capcom took my favorite lawyer boy and beat him to the curb. One of my biggest gripes with Apollo Justice was a little thing called agency. Essentially, this is when you have, or at least are under the impression that your choices are your own. Now, when you break games down, there are always rules and ways you're meant to do things. But the cream of the crop are the games that trick you into thinking, hey, that was my idea. It doesn't get any more linear than a visual novel such as Ace Attorney, so it's really up to the puzzles and story to get you invested. In my last video, I discussed how the first Ace Attorney game slowly progressed Phoenix from a novice who needed someone coming running in to save him, to someone capable of taking down malicious villains with his own hand. Apollo Justice doesn't do this. And if you don't believe me, allow me to take you through it case by case. In the first case, Apollo sits back and watches while Phoenix does all the work. This is the best case in the game. It has a stellar twist with Christoph Gavin turning out to be involved in the crime, really diverting the player's expectation around mentor characters. Apollo then gets double father figure smackdown, discovering Phoenix forged evidence to get his guilty verdict. This is some good drama. A rookie lawyer who idolizes Phoenix Wright, probably the same way that most fans do, getting served a cold hard dose of reality. It's good stuff, but Apollo is a puppet. He's being used by everyone else involved for ulterior goals, originally by Christoph, but mostly by Phoenix. In case 2, Apollo takes the most action, but has to be bailed out by both Trucy and the new rival prosecutor, Clavier Gavin. Now, I like Clavier. Up until this point, literally all prosecutors started out as cold, irredeemable dirtbags, but Clavier is a really nice guy. His rivalry with Apollo feels natural, and Apollo's reactions are warranted. He doesn't dislike Clavier because he's a shady prosecutor, or bends the rules, or whips people. He's merely jealous of his rockstar demeanor, as I think most would be. Remember, Apollo is only 22 here. He's just a kid who's privy to such feelings. It's also just dawned on me that I'm the same age as Apollo Justice as of writing this video. God, what am I doing with my life? The problem with case 2 is it's boring. When anyone lists their favorite cases, does anyone go, oh yeah, Turnabout Corner, what a classic? Does anyone list any cases from this game for that matter? The villain is boring and Clavier holds Apollo's hand the whole way through. Now, as I said in my last video, people helping the protagonist find their feet is a-okay in storytelling, but unlike Phoenix Wright, it never ends with Apollo. In case 3, the whole thing devolves into Clavier having a tiff with his boyfriend, band friend, with stupid hair, even for anime. The whole case devolves into watching them argue with each other, and the whole thing is so predictable and drawn out I was almost bored to death. Apollo just sits there and waits to point his finger and say, "You did it," ages after it becomes very apparent. And before you know it, we're at the final case, and boy is this one a doozy. It tries to wrap up Apollo and Trucy's family drama, entangling it with Phoenix being disbarred, and at the end of the day, fails to resolve practically anything. Apollo and Trucy never discover the truth about their mother, and learn nothing new except how Vera Misham and her father were killed by that crazy guy from the first case. We also learn Kristoff's motive. He framed Phoenix right, because he lost to his client at a game of poker, and was angry that Phoenix was offered the job instead. But wait, Jack, he's crazy. Well, yes, but that doesn't make it any less anticlimactic. And boy, how anticlimactic it is. After discovering Kristoff was up to no good once more, Apollo watches him and Clavier do what else but argue until Apollo points his finger at him and says, "You did it." Except this game has one last slap in the face. You see, Apollo doesn't even indict Kristoff. In one of the laziest choose-your-own-ending segments ever, Vera is found innocent because guess what? Phoenix Wright rigged the case to use the jury system. And you know how juries usually consist of people unrelated to the case? Well, this jury has Apollo's mother. And only through that decision is Kristoff sent back to the jail he was already in. Which for some reason is pampered and looks rather comfortable actually. So yeah, that's Apollo Justice, a game where Apollo watches other people do things 99% of the time, and occasionally watches people really closely, making wild assumptions about them based on sweating, or scars, or their reaction to the Great British Bake Off. This kind of deduction mechanic works really well in say a Sherlock Holmes style game, but this magic bracelet MacGuffin thingy is out of nowhere and doesn't hold up so much. The spirit channeling and magatamas were essential to the world and stories of Phoenix Wright. But Apollo and Trucy's abilities are never explained. They just are. Don't question it. I hear a lot of people complain that he's a lot like Phoenix, and there's not much to differentiate them. But I don't see that so much. I don't feel Phoenix would feel the same way towards Clavier. Apollo takes things a little more seriously than Phoenix, who always had more of a sense of humor. And future games would expand on this divide even more. Dual Destinies going as far as to have them at ideological odds. However, something future games did was throw in random characters from Apollo's past to try and flesh him out more, without putting the work in. While this worked sometimes, other times it felt really out of left field, with no build-up or emotional payoff. What's that? You've never heard of Apollo's most bestest friend in the world, Clan Schmickel? Well, they grew up together in Apollo's never brought up before foreign spiritual Amish family, who also have ties to Maya Fey from the original trilogy. So, how about the critical reception of Apollo Justice? Believe it or not, it was fairly positive. I even took a look at the most intellectual forum on the internet while researching this video to get some straight, anonymous opinions on the game. And even there, people would defend it. So is it just me? Am I so enamored with Phoenix Wright that Apollo taking over rubbed me the wrong way? Why can't I just enjoy this game? Well, I played through it again recently for this look back, and here's what I have to say. My initial arguments that Apollo is an inactive character throughout the narrative of the game may have been missing the point. When looking at the themes of Apollo Justice, there's one that stands above the rest. Betrayal. In the first case alone, Apollo is betrayed by both his mentor and idol. In Case 2, Waki is betrayed by his bride-to-be. Case 3 sees Clavier betrayed by his own bandmate, and Case 4 flashes us back to Phoenix being betrayed by his own client. In a lot of ways, the somber heartache that this game provoked in me may have been the point after all. You could argue this game betrays fans of Phoenix Wright, taking his narrative down a dark, uncertain path. Apollo Justice robs catharsis. And maybe that was intentional. Despite all my complaints with the game I made at the start of this retrospective, playing back through Ace Attorney 4, I really enjoyed it, and I can't deny that. I think the look, sound, and feel of the game complement each other incredibly well, and that sound, God, if this isn't one of the best Ace Attorney soundtracks out there. Capcom inevitably brought Phoenix back, even if he did try convincing Apollo that it was his story from then on out. So, where does that leave this game? Is Apollo Justice a good game? Well, good is subjective. The Jack half a decade ago wasn't very fond of it, and hell, even the Jack now still wouldn't regard its cases as the best. Yet, I've developed an appreciation for this game that I didn't have before, and that's gotta count for something. Anyway, I want to know your opinions on this game and what it means to you. Whether you tell me in a comment or a video response, I look forward to hearing from you. And above all, thanks for taking the time to watch my video. All the best, and take care.